Okay, so for the next part of the video, I want to talk about the mentality questions that we've gotten. So the first one is, do you have any tips for dealing with tournament nerves?
Yes. I did a coaching seminar at the U.S. Olympic Training Center in April called the CAP, the Coaches Accelerator Program. And I think there were either 18 people from 16 sports or 14 people from 16 sports, whatever. It was a lot of sports, not fencing specific at all, but 95% of it is applicable to fencing. Any coaches out there, if you're interested, talk to our national office, get on the list for this seminar. It's a 3-day thing. It's awesome. It's a lot about communication, and it's a long-winded way of getting around to one of the things they told us in these classes that um, anxiousness, anxiety, and excitement are cousins in the brain, and they actually both exhibit the same physical symptoms, like being sweaty palms, shaking, what you would just say nervous symptoms, not being able to concentrate. But if in your brain you can shift your thinking and replace the word nervous or scared with excited, and instead of saying I'm nervous to fence, you say I'm excited to fence. I'm excited to show people what I can do. It actually unlocks your brain and allows, the one big difference is it allows you to unlock your brain and actually perform. Saying you're nervous will lock your brain up, but saying you're excited will unlock what you can do and allow you to fence. So that's my
Yeah,
biggest.
100%. I think awesome answer. These feelings happen, you have them, and you make a decision about how you're going to interpret them. And I interpret the feelings in my stomach as a nervous, I can't do anything, I'm frozen, you're in trouble. I interpret it as my body's getting ready to compete, this is good. And one of Ralph's former teammates, Peter, we did a fencing camp in Canada. We did this like Q&A with Peter afterwards, and one of the kids put up his hand and he was like, well, what do you do when you get nervous? And Peter's answer was, I'm sorry, I can't help you. I don't know what that feels like. And I was like, hey, so do you ever get a feeling in your stomach or like some excitement before tournaments? He's like, oh yeah, yeah, that's my body getting ready. And I don't know if he actually, that was like something that he had decided later, or he really truly never interpreted those feelings as nerves, but that was an awesome answer because these feelings happened. I didn't try to change them. I didn't try to talk myself out of them. I engaged with them and said, all right, I'm excited, I'm ready. I think that's
And,
it.
that's actually really good for fencing too, because you can't control your opponent. You can only control your reactions to your opponent. You can only control yourself. So in the same way, if you can master your fencing movements, if you can master your emotions, and you're way ahead of the game.
If you're not nervous or anxious anymore, it's time to quit. I fenced pretty long. I fenced competitive until I was like 37. At the end, I wasn't nervous or anxious anymore because I didn't care anymore. So if there's no more emotion before a competition, same as a coach. Yeah, I'm also like excited before a competition. I want to see how the kids do. I want to see whether our work was good. If you're not, if you don't have any feelings anymore before a competition, you gotta quit. It's not your sport anymore. It's not your passion anymore. You're not passionate anymore. Uh, and it's part of the game, and it's an important part of the game. It's the same like when you see your love of your life the first time, probably you're also a bit nervous, a bit anxious, but it's a good feeling. So embrace the feeling. It's not going to go away anyway. And if you don't have it anymore, quit. Find a new passion.
So I actually had a really long conversation with Ivan Lee about this exact subject recently, and I'd like to read a quote from him that we talked about. He was telling me being nervous is a good thing. You can't compete without it. Nervousness is just your mind telling your body that this counts. And if I'm nervous, that means that I'm alive, sane, and sober. That nervousness will give me an extra boost that I'll need during the competition. My lunge will be a little longer, my cuts will be a little bit sharper, my parries will be a little quicker. And if I don't accept and embrace the nervousness, I can literally freeze up and not perform when I need to. Kind of like what you were saying before, Dan, about interpreting it in a certain way. And so he says to himself, if I'm nervous, but I still have to take this parry. And I have to remind myself, no matter how nervous I am, my opponent is just as nervous, if not more so. But he may not be able to embrace it the way that I'm able to. And if I can embrace it better than he does, then I have the advantage. So, and I thought that was a really cool answer.
A really good point too.
Yeah.
Like, people forget that these human beings in the room with them are experiencing the exact same emotions that they're experiencing. That's
all the way up to the top level. Even the number one person in the world gets nervous. It's just about channeling it in a way that's constructive. So, okay. So the next one is, what should I be thinking about before, during, and after a bout in a tournament? Anybody want to start?
That all depends on the person and the bout and who they're fencing. That's just, I feel like it's way too big. Before a bout, I would say if you have any like key phrases or like, again, going back to the coaching, they say we can take in about 7 units of information at a time, but most people it's about 2 to 3. So if you have like 2 to 3 key things you need to tell yourself to concentrate on to get yourself into the match, then that's before the match. During the match, you've got to do whatever you need to do to stay in the moment. And if you realize you're out of the moment, what do you need to focus on? It's probably going to be those 2 or 3 key things to get yourself back into the moment. And then after the bout is over, depending on even if you won or lost, you should be doing analysis of what you did well. What am I doing well today? Is this a trend of how I should think about my fencing today? Because maybe sometimes you like to attack, but your attack's just not on. You're not feeling something, but you're doing really well for a second intention. Or maybe today's a day where your attack is working while you're usually a defensive fencer. You've got to analyze what you did well, what you didn't do well, and then keep improving what's going on and see if you can hide what's not going well or fix it for the next one. Just constant self-analysis.
I think that the after is the easiest. I mean, if you're in a team match, you're up 5 hits later, don't do anything, get ready for the next one. So sometimes if you lose 5-0 and you think too much, you're going to lose the next one. So depending on the situation. But I mean, run an analysis. What was good, what was bad, same as Dan said. During the match, sometimes you're in a flow, right? It's good to don't think anything. Just keep in the flow. And if you're not in the flow, well, try to figure out why I am not in the flow, what's going wrong, what do I need to fix so that I can score the next point. So same thing, run an analysis. Can I just keep going? Am I subconsciously winning this and don't need to think about anything? Or do I actually need to interfere in the system? Before the match, depends. Can I gather some information about my opponent which are relevant for winning? Can I remind myself of, I don't know, 2 or 3 strengths that I have? How I'm going to start that bout? I think that's a very generic answer to this. And after that, it kind of comes down to probably if you're in a World Championship gold medal match, you're going to talk to the coach before that. Hey, how do we want to start the match? What do we need to look out for? What are the dangers? What is the strategy? But that's a whole different ball game.
Yeah, I think we, like myself as a younger coach, when I first started going to the World Cups, I'd go to the strip when some important bout was going on and be like, okay, what kind of like crazy knowledge are these guys going to drop on their fencers, right? It's bend your knees, slow down. It's very, very simple stuff that you hear in your first 2 weeks of fencing. So I think that the answer is, I would agree with both Ralf and Dan, but you have a couple cues that suit your fencing, and yourself, so you have a tendency to be a little overly aggressive, or you have a tendency to be risk averse. So you have to tell yourself these 1 or 2 things that you repeatedly say to yourself after the referee says halt, as you walk back to the on-guard line or whatever. But if you can't expect your conscious mind in this stressful circumstance to be able to process a ton of information. So simplify. You have a couple cues. You have a word you repeat to yourself that you've been repeating to yourself. Compete, whatever, something simple. And I think that's all you can ask of yourself. And of course, after the bout, it's a totally different story. First of all, turn and ask your coach what just happened. They didn't have all those like adrenaline. They remember it better than you do at this point. But other than that, like, I think a couple of cues that suit your fencing and your personality, and that's about it.
So how should you go about changing your mentality if things aren't going well and you're losing? This kind of folds into what we talked about a little bit before, but if you want to talk about it specifically.
I like what Ralph said before, change something. I guess it goes back to that cliche of like, you've got to work as hard. Whoa, phone's burning something. It's okay, it's done. You've got to work as hard.
Soundtrack, leave her alone.
You've got to work as hard, if not harder, when you're losing than when you're winning. And that's really hard to do. And then you've got to like do some like analysis on the spot of like what is going wrong here. And then you've got to be open to your coach. Hopefully you've got a coach on the side telling you something constructive, and you've got to be open to making that change, even though it may be very uncomfortable and it may not be the action you're best at. But if that's how you're scoring, you've got to suppress your natural instincts. And what Ralph was saying before about, okay, I really can't take 4 here. I've really got to take counter 6 or I'm going to get hit. If your coach is telling you that like every time you take 4, you're getting hit, you got to take counter 6. You've got to be open to that and be flexible enough to make that change and be confident in your coach and your training that you're going to do the right thing and you're going to dig it out.
I think when you're starting to lose, it comes out the reflection about yourself, right? Am I giving up? And I think that we don't want any of our students to give up, no matter what the score is. So that's number one. And number two, very often we start our match with the most confident action. If that doesn't work, the next one we are by nature less confident in, because if not, we would have started with that one. So that's what Dan says. Be ready to change to an action where before you were less confident in. And it takes some courage, because like, okay, I'm losing. My best action is not scoring. Now I have to rely on my second best action, third best, fourth best option, even though I'm 5 hits down. So I think once you run through that in your mind, it's going to be easier to do that on the spot. Rely on some outside brain. If you can't fix it yourself, you normally have a good coach beside who has a decent idea. And then in the end of the day, if you lose a match, but you can go home and say, hey, I did everything I could. I fought as hard as I can. Didn't win the competition today, because that's actually every participant except one, and can give yourself a pat on the shoulder for a 9th place, for a 17th place, for a 50th place. That's fine. But you represent yourself, you represent the coach, you represent the club, represent it well. Make sure that nobody gets the idea like, okay, those guys are giving up easily. And fence with a little bit of pride. I think that will help you through those through those matches where you're down a lot.
I completely echo what Ralph said, and I think you have to do that self-analysis. Some people are losing because they were a little bit lazy at the beginning of the match. Some people are losing, and it's a downward spiral of they start to give up on themselves and they start to doubt themselves, and it just gets worse and worse. Or they're just prone. They give up basically. And I think all of us as coaches, all we can really ask from our students is that when I'm at the strip with you and I'm trying, I want you to win. I'm going to do everything I can to help you win. That I get the same from you. And as long as you've, applied yourself to the best that you think you can, I mean, don't leave the competition wondering if really knowing that you gave up when you were down 9-4. because we've all been on the other end of that, where some kid from somewhere you've never heard of is down 9-4 and gets mad and tries a little bit harder. And at some point, there's this relationship where my intensity is here, my opponent raises it to here. And at that point, either I continue to, compete and raise the intensity myself, or I match them, or that makes me feel like something has changed and this person is like, and you see it all the time that people lose to someone who is not as skilled as them because the other person just refuses to lose. Just gets upset, goes a little harder, goes a little faster, is a little harder to hit, and all of a sudden the bout is completely different. So don't let that happen to you. and if you lose to someone who's better than you, it's okay. You lost to someone who is better than you. Go train.
I agree with what both of them said. You can always learn something from a loss and a win. Probably more from a loss than a win.
Right.
But you've got to learn. You've got to be constantly, and hopefully you're making your mistakes in practice, because the more mistakes you make in practice, hopefully you'll solve them and then you won't make them in the competition. But then you can always learn something from losing. And if you're not, then you're not looking at your fencing the right way. You don't have I don't think you've got the growth mindset to be really successful at the sport.
I once saw a match of Serena Williams in Singapore in the Masters. She's played against Simona Halep from Romania, and she lost 6-0, 6-1. The freaking match was over in a half an hour, but the lady tried everything. So Serena Williams put a towel over her head, cordoned herself off. Next time in the break, she took balls, did a serve, did some returns. She tried with higher risk. She tried with arguing. She tried with positive self-talk. Try to find an area where you're better than the opponent. And sometimes you don't actually need to be good at, because what do we coaches do? We try to find an area where are you better than your opponent. And we go trial and error. And sometimes we run out of options, right? Like in Rogue One, we try until we either succeed or we run out of options. And I have seen amazing comebacks in my life. I was on the receiving end. I was on the winning end. One time, one of the top 5 national fencers in this country in women's foil at 7-1 tried to flick my 14-year-old. So the 14-year-old got so freaking mad that at 7-1, she just staged a comeback, and within 20 seconds, she was back at 6-6. She said, "You ain't flicking me. I'm going to go after you." So she just got pissed off and then went after the other one, and then was so aggressive, so desperate, so high risk that it actually worked, and she kept doing it. What happened at 7-7? She went lower risk, less aggressive, lost the match 8-7 in overtime. But if she would have continued, she would have potentially won. So she left the area where she was better at to go back to something where she wasn't better at. So try. Maybe you find something, you find an area where you are better at.
Okay, nice. And the last question is, can you discuss quickly how someone could go about finding their ideal competition mentality, since that's different for every person?
This one, I think, is very personal. You have to find out a mode which works for you. Me, personally, I had 2 modes. One is I don't talk to anybody during the whole freaking competition. Everybody thinks I'm a weirdo, but who cares? I'm there to compete, not to make friends. And the second one is I was very comfortable talking to everybody, had a chat with everybody, felt comfortable. And in the morning, I kind of knew which mode am I in. Do I require focus? Can I be a little bit more open? And if you see that, every single fence is a little bit different. Some they don't want to do warm-up bouts. Some they want to have a lesson. Some they want to fence a lot before they start. I think that's very individual. You have to find something that works for yourself, and then do it yourself. Everybody is different. We are not a team sport where a team has to warm up a certain way. It's an individual sport. Find out what works best for you, and once you reach a certain age, I give you the liberty to try that. If it doesn't work, I will interfere in the system as a coach.
Yeah, that's perfect. It's all up to the fencer. I mean, and unless something's going wrong, then the coach has to step in. But I think for me, I wore the same T-shirt in the first round of every tournament for 20 years. I still have the T-shirt. and I still have the T-shirt, and it like used to disappear, but then it would show up, and then there's the T-shirt. I was like, okay, everything will be fine. And then for me, it was putting on music and concentrating, and then not talking to anybody until the first like done with the first round. Didn't really want to talk to anybody, but it was all up to. It was like Ralf said, it's all up to you, your mentality, what you need to get into the zone. And as long as that's working, go with it. But the minute it's not working, you better be able to take constructive criticism to fix it.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think this is for you, right? You have a unique opportunity that not a lot of people have to get out there and project your personality, yourself. And for some people, like Ralf said, I put on my headphones. I don't talk to anyone when I'm warming up. For some people, they're super social. Some of them oscillate between those things. Embrace what you're feeling and be yourself. That's what else can you do?
Yeah.
Well, some students will make you nuts. I have one guy, he runs around, talks to everybody, and sometimes you think he's at a birthday party. But after that he performs. It makes me crazy. Like, dude, you want to warm up? Or myself, I wore contact lenses. I hated to warm up too much. So I was always sitting around, and my coach would say, hey, can you please warm up? I said, oh, I have to put my contacts. So I would go to the restroom, take my sweet time putting the contacts. So I think.
Well, I've learned to try to stay away from the venue during the warm up, because some of our people show up an hour before the tournament. They're like basically doing a full body workout before the competition starts, and I'm like, okay, this is a little much. By the way, they have a routine they're supposed to do, so everyone's supposed to know what they're going to do. But some people that just don't feel like, I don't know, it's 7 o'clock in the morning, I'm tired, so they roll in at 7:30. They sit down for a while. They're flicking their foot, sitting in this but what that and I haven't noticed any correlation, by the way, between like their warm-up routine and their results. So I would just, again, my feeling is like people do what suits them, and sometimes they need some guidance if they're like injury prone or they're clearly not ready in the first round. But other than that, I mean,
but best strategy is this.
To be out there and compete the way you want to compete. Do it. Have fun with it.
Best strategy is distract the parents. So that they don't warm up the kids. I think that's the biggest change in the last 20 years. 20 years ago, everybody could do their own warm up. Now you have to make sure that the kids run the warm up and not some parents.
Andrew, there was one question that was missing. It's like, why is foil the best weapon? How come you didn't ask that?
I got that question a couple
Andrew
times.
answered that one, actually.
It's because it's got the most amount of rules and the least amount of target. It's the hardest by far.
I do have one more bonus question if you got 2 more minutes.
All right.
How often do you feel the urge to throw things at your students, and how do you resist that urge?
Every second of every day, and I don't have to resist it if I throw like soft things at them. I can also get written permission from parents saying it's okay to hit their kids. Because as long as it's within the bounds of our sport, it's not a safe sport violation.
Good to know.
I'm probably on the other end. I mean, whenever you throw something at your kids, you might as well throw it as yourself because you're part of the team.
Yeah.
I don't like coaches who like, hey, look, my student wins the championship. I'm the biggest coach of the world. And then if they don't win a single match in the pools, you're like, what idiot are you as a student? I think we're all part of a process. Whenever you scream at your kids, you probably scream a little bit at yourself. I sometimes have to calm myself down when I think that the capabilities of the student and the actual performance are not in a good balance. And I think the student could have done better and didn't put the necessary effort. But sometimes kids have a bad day. You see they have a bad day. I think we are part of a process, and screaming at kids or throwing stuff at kids, I might as well throw it at myself because I'm part of it.
Yeah, my answer would be it depends on how many days a week June Pack shows up to fencing. No, I'd turn that question around on Alana Goldie. I would ask Paul Apsimon or Michael Pedersen to answer how many times they have wanted to throw something at Alana. That's my answer.
Find out later.
I just throw stuff at the kids randomly during practice to see if they're paying attention. If they
Yeah, I mean,
head,
dodgeball is
I
a fairly
know.
big
So
thing with me, so
what?
dodgeball is a fairly big thing with me.
Yeah.
Surprise dodgeball, even better.
I'm always throwing stuff at the kids during footwork or like during a drill. You better stop and catch it, or else you're not paying attention.
All right, fantastic. Does anyone else want to say anything before we split?
Yeah, we're all holed up at home. I know it sucks, but we all love fencing. I hope that we continue to find ways to just get in touch with each other, talk about fencing. If you're, I mean, in Ralph's case, you're actually like, I don't know, maybe we have to look into doing that stuff, but I think that what all this has shown is how dedicated the fencing community is, and it's awesome. And I'm happy that you guys took the time to talk. It's for me, like, I'm stuck with Kelly all day. It's basically no, I'm just kidding. It's awesome, but one of my favorite things about going to fencing tournaments is hanging out and talking about fencing with my friends. Yeah. So I hope that everybody keeps their spirits up, and it'll be over soon. We'll be actually giving fencing lessons instead of just talking about it.
Totally.
Yeah, Alex, you organized this, so thank you very much. It was a ton of fun, and maybe we can do another one in a few days or something.
Yeah, for sure. It's not like we're doing anything.
It shows actually how passionate we are about this sport, right? We could all sit at home and not do anything, but what we do with fencing, right?
Talk about fencing.
So that's actually good news, and I think that despite what's going out there and how crazy the world is currently, I think the conversation about fencing will continue. I think we will find a way how to get to our students so that they're not totally bored at home. And I think after that, we will be happy and even happier to go to competitions, be back on a real fencing strip. And I think it's a good healing for everybody, like how much we miss it, because sometimes it's tough. And I think the first competition after all this would be so much fun. We will be so happy to see each other. We will not scold the referees unnecessarily.
We'll see.
I think it's going to be great once we are through this.
Depends on whether Joan is refereeing.
That's true.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. And just to the people at home, quickly, I know that you are holed up and you're kind of bored, but try not to go out more than you need to. We're all in the same position, and as long as you're still thinking about fencing and exercising a little bit, I think everything is going to be great. And when you come out, you may even feel more energized than you did when you took your forced break, and that might help you more than you expected to. So just stay safe and make good decisions, and just keep thinking about how much you like to fence. So thanks, guys, so much for
Thank you.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, I hope we can do it again soon. Bye, guys.
Yeah, bye.
See you guys.